Woe men, one vision. Lenin and Stalin, revolutionaries whose partnership, forged in idealism, turned into one of history's greatest power struggles. Today, we're not just exploring how these men changed Russia and the world, but also diving into what their complex relationship teaches us about ambition, leadership, and the dangers of unchecked power. Early beginnings, Lenin and Stalin's first encounters. Our story begins at a pivotal moment in revolutionary Russia, 1905. Imagine being Stalin, young, intense, raised in the harsh world of Georgia, then meeting Vladimir Lenin, the man who defined your worldview. Stalin idolized Lenin, who was already a legend, rallying intellectuals and laborers alike to fight for a better world. But upon meeting him, Stalin felt a mix of admiration and surprise. Here was Lenin, not grandiose or overpowering, but a small, sharp-eyed man whose quiet confidence spoke louder than words. Stalin's reaction here is something many of us might relate to when meeting a mentor or role model for the first time. Sometimes they're not what we expected. They're just human, even with their flaws. But the core lessons they offer, insight, vision, practical wisdom, can still shape us. Here, Lenin's focused approach and calm intensity likely showed Stalin something new, that power didn't always have to shout. It could be quietly strategic. Yet Stalin, always the pragmatist, had his own ways, tough, unyielding, and relentless. Their bond deepens. Shared ideals, different paths. During these early years, Stalin became Lenin's man of action. He organized risky missions, raised money for the cause, and orchestrated heists to fund Lenin's movement. One such operation was the infamous Tiflis bank robbery in 1907, a heist straight out of an action movie, involving explosions, violence, and stolen cash. But Lenin saw it as necessary. Without funds, the revolution couldn't survive. Stalin's methods, though often brutal, kept the Bolshevik movement alive in the darkest days. Imagine this situation today, a startup or a project you believe in so deeply that you're willing to take risks others might avoid. In some sense, Lenin and Stalin's early relationship was like that of an ambitious entrepreneur and a dedicated COO. Lenin had the vision. Stalin got things done, often by whatever means necessary. But what happens when the doer starts to envision himself as more than just the executor? This is where the cracks begin to form. The turning point, the revolution succeeds, and the battle for control begins. Fast forward to 1917. The Russian people were tired of war, poverty, and an out-of-touch monarchy. They wanted change, and Lenin was ready to deliver it, with Stalin and other key allies. The October Revolution succeeded, and the Bolsheviks were now in power. Lenin saw this as the start of his dream, a united socialist state where equality reigned. Yet, as often happens in partnerships, this moment of triumph planted seeds of tension. As they moved from revolutionary idealism to the practical demands of governance, Lenin began to see a different side of Stalin. Now in control, Stalin pushed for policies that leaned toward authoritarianism, centralizing power in Moscow, even if it meant suppressing local identities and aspirations. Lenin, who envisioned a federation of autonomous republics, was appalled. This ideological clash highlights something we might see in our own lives, the difference between theory and reality. You might have a business partner, colleague, or friend with whom you share a vision. But once that vision becomes a reality, priorities often shift. Lenin's focus was still on his ideals, while Stalin's shifted to consolidating control, tightening his grip. In life, partnerships only thrive when both sides adapt. Stalin, however, had his own ideas on how things should be done. Lenin's realization, we've created a monster. When Lenin saw Stalin's growing ruthlessness, he became increasingly uneasy. By the early 1920s, Lenin was desperately trying to warn the Communist Party. In a famous letter known as Lenin's Testament, he criticized Stalin's abrasive tactics, calling for his removal from power. But Stalin was already well entrenched, with allies strategically placed in every part of the government. Lenin, now ill and bedridden, knew he was losing control of his own movement. Think about this situation in terms of real life. How often have we seen someone build something up, only to watch others twist it into something unrecognizable. Whether it's a family business, a non-profit, or even a social circle, sometimes those with a strong vision don't realize until it's too late that the people they trusted have different motives. For Lenin, it was a tragic moment, realizing that the revolution he fought for was being steered toward authoritarianism by someone he'd once trusted. Stalin's rise, the power struggle, and the new Soviet Union. By the time Lenin passed away in 1924, Stalin was well prepared. He had quietly built a network of loyalty, making him nearly untouchable. In public, Stalin mourned Lenin's death and presented himself as the faithful successor. Privately, he was consolidating his hold on power, ousting rivals like Leon Trotsky, and shaping the Soviet Union into a machine of absolute control. This transition from comrade to controller is something we can see in many aspects of life, especially in organizations. Leaders who consolidate power often start by pushing others aside, isolating themselves until they're unchallenged. For Stalin, who once admired Lenin, the admiration had turned into ambition, and the need for control eclipsed any sense of camaraderie or loyalty. Lessons in leadership. What can we take away from Lenin and Stalin? The Lenin-Stalin story is ultimately a tale of betrayal, ambition, and the unforeseen costs of loyalty. It offers practical lessons for anyone dealing with partnerships, especially when power dynamics are at play. 1. Understand your partner's character early on. Lenin saw Stalin as an ally, but he overlooked his harsh tendencies and ruthlessness because they served a purpose in the short term. In real life, when choosing partners, be it in business or personal relationships, knowing their character is essential. While some traits may be useful in tough situations, they can become dangerous when power and control are involved. 2. Have checks and balances. One of Lenin's greatest mistakes was creating a system where Stalin could gain too much control. Without checks and balances, even well-meaning organizations can shift toward authoritarianism. This applies to any structure, organizations, friendships, or teams. Without a culture of accountability, power easily becomes centralized, and corruption can set in. 3. Don't ignore warning signs. Lenin saw Stalin's aggressive tactics, yet it took him years to address the issue directly. Often we ignore early warning signs when dealing with people who are close to us or who are valuable to our goals. The lesson here is that ignoring someone's behavior because they're useful can lead to disastrous outcomes. 4. Recognize when ideals are compromised. Lenin dreamed of a socialist state founded on equality and unity, but Stalin had no problem using authoritarian tactics. This shift reveals the importance of staying true to core values even when the journey gets tough. In any project or life goal, knowing when you've strayed from your values and correcting course is crucial. Conclusion. The relationship between Lenin and Stalin is a sobering reminder of how ambition and trust can shift, and how the best-laid ideals can be twisted by those hungry for power. Their story shows us that partnerships need vigilance, mutual respect, and boundaries. For Lenin, his dream of a fair society was ultimately taken over by someone who turned it into a regime of control. As we reflect on their story, perhaps the most valuable lesson is this: trust is precious, but in matters of vision and values, it must be guarded carefully.